Let's bring that conversation home to Nigeria, where the country is looking to achieve a 2.7 million barrels per day oil output by the year 2027. But the bigger news is in the country's oil refining industry, where the entry of Dangote's $20 billion Petrochemical facility has become a game changer and a foreign exchange earner. Welcome my guest on that from our Abuja studios, Professor Ken Ife, a development economist and a public policy analyst. Good evening to you, Professor. Thank you very much for coming into the conversation tonight. Now, I'm sure you're listening to the conversation there with NJ. How much of Nigeria's decades-long problem of petrol scarcity and pricing problems has the coming on board of the Dangote refinery helped the country to resolve?
It was a horror story. You know, how else could you describe excruciating pain that Nigerians have to endure over these last 10 years? And we spent over $8 billion, not only in subsidy terms, but also in losses of revenue because we were exporting all that crude on a crude swap arrangement and then bringing in only one out of so many, over 100 products that you could get from crude. We were just PMS that we were bargaining for. And here, the Bola administration just came in and changed all that. And they said, look, banish the subsidy regime, went for full implementation of the PIA Act, which is the Petroleum Industry Act. And in particular, the domestic crude oil supply obligation, because that is the obligation that requires the lessees to make sure they supply the crude requirements by local refiners before exporting. And then also merged the downstream and midstream departments of DPR with the petroleum pricing and the equalization. Of course, they've banished the equalization as well. And then now they are having to enforce that to ensure that allocation of crude takes precedence, or in terms of supply to the domestic, it takes precedence over export. Then make sure that they also advertise those requirements, and then also they police that. So that has sanitized the industry. And then there's another added principle that we should have a Naira crude swap, which is music to the ears of every Nigerian citizen. You can buy crude and sell the petrol in Naira. So that nailed all that preach. But then, of course, you know what that meant? It now meant that domestic consumers are now celebrating the fact that the coming of the Dangote refinery now gives us confidence about capacity to export crude, not just to import, but to export, and extremely high quality for that matter. Because what we are seeing over the years, we are dumping of substandard petroleum products. Sometimes the bioethanol component were too high, and then we suffered. And then you know what that dumping means? It means predatory pricing, apart from the substandard nature of the product, but predatory pricing that targets your local capacity and make sure that you don't have the capacity to compete.
So, Professor,
all of those are now bad side.
Yes, sorry, Professor. You talk about the equalization fund. Where are we on real fuel subsidy right now, really, with the Dangote refinery in the mix? Okay,
now, what has actually happened is that the president has pushed subsidy away from public purse and is now in the private purse, because the equalization fund ought to deal with the differences, the differential, the transport costs of if you have petrol and you have to sell it all over the country at a price, then there is a transportation cost that will make sure that you enforce that. That's what the equalization will deal with. But the equalization fund is said to be owing about 80 billion to the marketers. So that argument is going on, and wherever it's going to end, in the end of the day, this Christmas season, which is always the worst case scenario, that we all of us suffer from shortage of crude, hoarding of crude, but not crude, hoarding of petrol,
yes.
So, all kinds of things, high prices, and those import affects food. So what happened is that the Dangote group decided, okay, let's take it out. So they equalized, and it cost them over $10 billion Naira. They took out all that cost. So that subsidy has been absorbed by them. And that is what it should be. Take away subsidy from from public purse and push it to the private sector. Not only that they absorb that subsidy, but they also lower the price. So giving you competition, that's what we want. We're going to have more competition. There are modular refineries coming in. 2 of the NNPC refineries are in. Dangote is there. And in fact, Trump can say anything he likes about crude babies swap. It won't affect Nigeria because we have capacity now to produce and meet our own needs. But beyond that, who knows that you have so many more products coming out of petroleum? BP, Shell BP bought over 450,000 barrels. And then you have the Saudi Aramco taking 2 shiploads of jet fuel. Revenue, that's export revenue. And then you also have urea being exported. You have other fertilizer products. You have monomeric materials, methane, polymethane, butadiene, so many products from petroleum that are now being exported. And that means revenue coming in.
That's just a big difference. That's my point, my question about when we talk about refining business in Nigeria, well, an average Nigerian on the street thinks about petroleum refinery business just about petrol. So when we talk about the business and the economics of setting up a refinery such as the Dangote refinery, how much impact or consequences do you think that will have just beyond just filling the tank or buying petrol into jerrycan, whatever?
See, with the Dangote model, we are beginning to see that we can actually get far more product than just the PMS people think about. Of course, you have the diesel. You have all these butadienes and what we call platform chemicals with which you can produce infinite range of organic products. And then you also have like the jet fuel, kerosene, jet fuel, and then gases as well. And then you have the phosphates and urea, all of those. So there are many, many products that are being produced and exported, any substantial revenue. But the other thing is this. This is not only just backward integration, but what happens is that the same company will open oil fields in other neighboring African countries, open refineries in other neighboring countries, and export naphtha to them to refine to earn dollar for Nigeria, and then import their crude and refine to get knowledge. So you will see a very, very different, like the cement, what he did in cement. We have over 8 countries where he's now doing cement, and then we're now exporting clinkers to these countries. And then, so it's actually reversing our import dependence, to export dependence. So it's complete reversal. And then downward, all the downstream industries, the downstream petrochemical industries can now come in. Those making tires, those using tire, all kinds of products, and the supply chain will be expanded. It's incredible. So we're going to see a new energy sector in this country.
In terms of outlook, do you think which Nigerians should still expect petrol prices still tweaked a bit more lower? If you look at oil prices, which, well, he said we shouldn't mind President Trump, whatever he's saying, but again, if oil prices go down, or crude prices go down to the lower end of the $70 a barrel handle or thereabout, do you think Nigeria should still be able to enjoy a few more haircuts, as it were, in terms of petrol pricing? Do you think that's possible?
No, I think it is. I think it might even go below 70, without a doubt, because he means business. Remember last time when he was there, it was even worse. But now, Nigeria is ready. We would all have been crying if the situation was like what it was when this guy was there last time. Now, Nigeria is stronger because we have our big boys in position. And now we've gotten away with we've got rid of the NNPC monopoly on export of crude or water. We've got rid of all of that. We are fully implementing. Even the companies, the IOCs in the country onshore are leaving. And then Nigerians are taking control. They are still active in the offshore. And then, so we're in a better position than any time else in the last 10 years to be able to fight and then deliver all that dividend to Nigerians. So we couldn't be bothered about what happens on the upper, as long as we don't touch this policy of naira to crude, because that is the center. If you touch that, then I don't think the company will be justified to remove all these equalization expenses. No, I don't think it will be surprised. So we should allow that to take place. So irrespective of how crude goes up and down, We are buying our crude in Naira. We are selling our PMS in Naira. So we now exonerate the public consumption and then face the export. We have more. In fact, what are we exporting the crude for? We don't need to export our crude to America, even though America is the biggest producer of crude, but some of their refineries are built on our Brent crude. So, but we don't have any business because we can't even satisfy the demand of that. And I think he should even be given more prolific oil fields and offshore oil fields to be able to meet his demand. So we shouldn't be fazed by what President Trump is doing at all, not at all.
All right. We thank you, as always, Professor Ken Ife in our Abuja studios. Do have a great evening, sir. Thank you so much for this conversation.